Welcome back to Trekking with Pat. We're going to do a revisiting of North Carolina and Tennessee. This video will take a little bit longer than usual, but I'd like to go over a lot of the highlights that weren't included with just my videos that show all the really cool things that I see out on the trail. One of the first things I'd like to cover is the weather. So I started my journey on the 12th of February, and I got into North Carolina around the 22nd of February. So about 10 days through Georgia, and it was snowing the day I got into North Carolina. It got very cold that night, staying at the Muskrat Shelter, and even colder the next night after that, staying at the Cable Gap Shelter. The wind was blowing probably 50 to 60 miles an hour at the Cable Gap Shelter. Anytime you had exposed skin, it was almost instantly starting to freeze up. So it was very difficult to get stoves going, keep your fire going, and being able to heat up water for your food. One of the great things about the Cable Gap Shelter was I had awesome cell phone reception. And as long as I was tucked away in my quilt, I was pretty warm. Out of the wind, I was warm with the choices that I made for my layers and of course my quilt. So happy about that. And I worked my way down into Rock Gap, where I spent a 0 day in Franklin. I stayed at the Grove with Willow and Bloobs. Really a great place. They have room for about 14 hikers in there. They don't accept dogs and don't expect them to change their policy. They've already had problems with that. But they're great people. They're wonderful to be with, and I really enjoyed my time there. Everything is pretty easy to walk around and get to from their location in Franklin, as far as Outdoor 76, where if you're a thru hiker, you can get your free buff from them. They're also very knowledgeable on gear and helped me make some adjustments to my gear because I was having problems with the sleeping pad. My sleeping pad was leaking from the get-go on the journey, and I finally got it replaced when I got into Irwin. And Standing Bear Farm. And leaving out of Franklin, going up into the mountains, through some of the balls that they have there. Wesser Bald was pretty neat. There's a fire tower dedicated to one of the pioneers in the area, and the neat thing about that is great views from there, which you've probably already seen on my video. Down into the NOC through some very steep terrain. I mean, when you're on the trail, you're looking down thousands of feet on either side of the trail. And getting down was quite the trip. Extensive use of poles. I did spend a night at the NOC. I got my shower in. I was able to use their kitchen facilities that they have for thru hikers and for people that stay at their facility. It was pretty reasonably priced. I want to say it was $36. You could check in late, which I did. I dropped off my keys in a drop-off box on the way out and just kept on marching on up and out of the NOC area. That's the Nantahala Outdoor Center in the Nantahala National Forest. So that was a pretty neat experience coming in out of there. From there, I headed into Fontana Dam. I went to Fontana Village and I spent a 0 day there. I was able to get my laundry done. I was waiting for my replacement sleeping pad, which showed up the day I left. The hours at the post office are limited, and if they don't have it then, they may get a later delivery, but you won't get it till the next day. So up and out of there into the Smokies. In Fontana Dam, Donna is one of the people that work in the office there, and she was very helpful with everything that she did. So thank you, Donna, and don't be afraid to stop in there. It's a pretty neat place. Once I got back on a trail, I was able to check out the Fontana Hilton. I included a video on Fontana Dam, which included images of the Fontana Hilton. A great looking facility. It was empty, it was clean, and it was a very nice day the day that I visited there and got up into the Smokies. The Smokies was a trudge. I went through the Smokies in 5 days. The weather was really nice. It was cold, but it was sunny most of the days. Towards the end of my time on the 4th day, it got windy. On the night of the 4th, my 4th night there, it rained really hard, and in the shelter I was in, it actually leaked through the roof, and then that leaked through from the upper level to the lower level. So not much sleep that night. I didn't get my gear too wet, so I wasn't too upset. But I had to go through an awful lot of fresh blowdowns to get down out of the Smokies. I was able to pick up my gear, my resupply box and my gear at Standing Bear Farm. And then I continued on up onto the Max Patch and made my way into Hot Springs, North Carolina. Hot Springs affected pretty severely by the hurricane. They're still trying to get their capacity up and running. The diner is open, the Smoky Diner is open. The Hillbilly Cafe is open, and Sarah Joe's gas station is open, and they all have things for hikers. I climbed up and out of Hot Springs on my way to Irwin. A lot of damage the closer you got to Irwin out of Hot Springs. There was damage all along the trail, but it was even more extensive when you got to Spivey Gap on your way down into Irwin. And once you got into Irwin, you could see where the bridge was washed over to one side of the river. You've probably seen that in my video, if you've watched the video. And right now, of course, it was a couple days after I got there and left that they started the ferry service, the rubber raft ferry service across the Nolichucky River. We ended up doing a slack pack, a 20-mile slack pack, got dropped off at Iron Mountain Gap and hiked our way back into Irwin, and from there, the next morning we were dropped off at Iron Mountain Gap and headed north out of there. Heading north out of Iron Mountain Gap, extreme devastation up there, and there was a little bit of difficulty finding the trail. Once we got on the trail, it's been cleared out enough that you could make it through. The biggest concern walking up and down the trail where all the damage is all the small sticks and things down at the bottom that you step on one, it pokes your other foot as you start to swing it by. You get yourself caught off guard or get knocked off balance, and the next thing you know, you're ending up in a bunch of bushes. So you have to be very careful in the areas that are being cleared. We stayed at the Super 8 one night in Irwin, and the second night we stayed at Uncle Johnny's in one of their little cabins that they have right there. It is on the near side of the river before you make the crossing to head off towards the Rowan Highlands. There's an outfitter right there with Terry and Jackie, and it's a wonderful operation, and they're great people. When we headed off to the Rowan Highlands, the weather was great. We had some cold nights. We had a lot of sunny days. It would get up close to 60 degrees. We had a lot of windy days. And we actually had a snowy day, a snowy night, and it got snow inside the shelter. And we headed down into Roan Mountain Tennessee and stayed at the station at 19E. We got there on St. Patrick's Day, had a Guinness, did the laundry, and moved out the next day. On our way from the Roan Highlands towards Hampton, we discussed it with a few of the other hikers that were heading northbound, and based on some of the reports of people heading southbound, there's a 3 to 5 mile section north of Hampton, between Hampton and Damascus. We discussed it with other hikers and hikers that were moving southbound about a section between Hampton and Elizabethton, where there's a 21-mile section that you could bypass doing the Aqua Blaze, and in that 21-mile section was a 3 to 5 mile area which hadn't been cleared at all. So it would have been, obstacle course, jungle gym, Olympics, try to get through all the blowdowns there. We decided we were going to do the Aqua Blaze. We kayaked on Watauga Lake, and we had a nice dinner before we were dropped off back on the trail and headed up to a shelter on our way into the Damascus area. So let's talk a little bit about gear. The weather was pretty extreme. The wind's very strong at times. You want to make sure that you have gear that helps prevent wind from getting in and making you cold, so that you control your body temperature. There's a lot of days when I was hiking with just shorts on, even though it was cold. As long as it wasn't windy, it wasn't uncomfortable, even down to 25 degrees. That helped me maintain my body temperature at a cooler temperature, whereas I didn't have to worry about having to consume as much water to keep my body cool. Make sure you have different layers that allow you to regulate your body temperature without it being a big deal. And I was successful in making some changes on that allowed me to maintain a body temperature that kept me from overheating and kept me from getting too cold. And a lot of times it was just putting on my rain pants to keep my legs just a little bit warmer than being freezing cold because of the winds. You want to make sure that your sleep system accommodates for the different temperatures out there, because it gets pretty cold early in the season. And I have to say that with my 20-degree quilt with a liner and then the layers that I have to wear, I was never cold while sleeping. As a matter of fact, there were a lot of nights when the temperatures were in the 40s and ended up having to peel stuff off because I was so warm. I find that using gaiters helps keep stuff out of my shoes. Some people don't like them, that's personal preference, but check it out, see what you like. I hate getting stuff like dirt, sticks, all kinds of detritus that you get from the trail knocked up and into my shoes, because then it starts rubbing and you could get blisters from that. So by having a decent pair of gaiters, whatever size you want to get, helps keep some of that stuff out of there. Being able to wear my hat to cover my head, my hoodies to pull up and pull down to help regulate temperature, all good choices. The thing that is probably the most important clothing choice that I believe out there is a good pair of gloves that help keep your fingers warm when it's really cold and help warm them back up after you have to take them off to do things without your gloves on, like get your fire going and stuff like that. So that's been important, and I struggled quite a bit to find a decent pair of gloves in order to do that. A little bit about resupplies. Resupplies in the affected area, even as far as Irwin, can be challenging. I sent a box to the Mountain Outfitters, Mountain Crossing in Neal Gap, and to my knowledge, it's still somewhere between a couple distribution centers southeast of Atlanta for some reason. And I have to work with customer service in order to get that box back. Also sent a box to Irwin that didn't get there because it didn't leave San Antonio for over 4 days. And it was supposed to be delivered in 2 to 3 days. So I'm not sure what's up with that. That'll be another discussion with the people from the United States Postal Service. limited hours on a lot of those small towns that have small post offices and limited hours. So you need to make sure that you get there in plenty of time, and also make note that a lot of the times on far out aren't correct. They're close to being correct, but not correct. The day we were working our way down to Station 19E was the day that we left North Carolina. And how appropriate that day was is that it snowed that night and the winds were blowing. It was 22 degrees outside and the winds were blowing 50 to 60 miles an hour. There were times when it knocked me over on the trail. So once we got down out of the Roan Highlands and behind some of those hills where we were on the leeward side and the winds died down, it was actually pretty pleasant. But getting over those balls, it was a bit of a chore, so be prepared for that too. The Aqua Blaze was hosted by Boots Off Hostel in Hampton, Tennessee. Great operation. They took us down to the lake, dropped us off. We paddled for about 8.5 miles. You can make it longer. You can take your time. It took us about 2.5 hours to do ours, but you have as many hours as you'd like to do it, depending on what time you get started. We got started in the afternoon. Once we got to the far end of the lake where we were finishing up our Aqua Blaze, went up to this little like gas station type diner, had a wonderful $6 double bacon cheeseburger and French fries. Awesome meal at a great price. And then from there we were dropped off to head back on the trail. I haven't had any hiker hunger because I think my nutritional choices have been well thought out and planned ahead. A lot of the choices for resupplies out there are pretty limited. You can get some meals, some of the prepackaged just add water meals, but a lot of the food that's out there are going to be things like the ramen, the Nor sides, maybe some small packets of proteins like chicken, salmon, or tuna. Very limited, the snacks, which if you take the time to research and look for, you're not going to find those great choices on the trail. You're going to find choices that aren't that great. So you need to determine what's more important to you, to be healthy and put a little effort into it, or wing it and then really pig out every time you get into town in order to eat something that's more nutritionally valued to you. Okay, well, my video sums up my experiences in North Carolina and Tennessee. Hope you got some good information out of that. Hope to see you out there. Happy trails.